It's all of 2 minutes. So thanks for joining us in our very first night of leadership conversations with not just any leaders, but leaders who really elevate the Bronx. Today's program will have 2 sessions. Our very first session is 6 to 7, and Mr. Grant and Alex Gomez will share on their leadership journeys, and we will close the Zoom for 15 minutes for a brief intermission and reopen it at 7:15 to 8 p.m. And that would be less of a structured presentation and more of networking. But before we officially start, I want to thank Mr. Phillip Grant for joining us. Thank Alex Gomez, who is the finance manager of Hunts Point. Janitza isn't here, Kevin isn't here, but I know they are part of the team and I want to acknowledge them. I also want to thank Dr. Janet DeSimone for always collaborating with us to coordinate this series. Dr. DeSimone is the force behind leadership studies, educational leadership, MSOL, and the new doctorate, the EDOL at Lehman. We also have Tara Regis, who from the Lehman College Foundation, who introduced us to Mr. Grant, and Dr. Dean Hurley, who we'll meet later on, who is the Dean of the School of Business. And last but not least, our very own David Chakapi, the Assistant Director of Clubs and Organizations, Nathaniel Gaskew, the Assistant Director of Budgets, Patricia McDonough, the Food Bank Coordinator, Miss Emily Weiland, who is our Leadership Instructor, and the SGA representative. And Emily will now introduce our very brilliant Mr. Phillip Grant.
Hi, everyone. Phillip Grant is the General Manager of the Hunts Point Produce Market. Phillip leads a team of 125 staff supporting the day-to-day market operations and capital planning for over 30 merchants. Hunts Point spans 1 million square feet and sits on over 112 acres. Previously, Phillip was the Senior Vice President and Director of the Construction for the Asset Management Operations Division of the New York City Economic Development Corporation. Phillip led the division's over $1 billion capital project portfolio. Key projects included NYC Ferry, Brooklyn Army Terminal Phase 5, and Made in New York campus, and various capital projects in the Hunts Point area of the Bronx. Phillip is a licensed professional engineer in New York and a certified construction manager. He is a graduate of Fairleigh Dickinson University and holds an MBA from Mercy College. And with that, please welcome Phillip Grant.
Thank you all. This is some of my favorite things to do. Thank you, Suzette. Thank you to the team over at Mercy. Thank you, most importantly, Emily. Thank you, and the team. And when Suzette mentioned our team back at home, it really, it's a proud thing for me to think about a team that really runs the New York's food infrastructure right here in the Bronx. Good evening. First and foremost, I want to start by giving thanks. And I said thank you to the team again. Thank you for inviting me to this executive leadership conversation. Thank you to my colleagues and friends. Most importantly, thank you to my wife and family who continue to support me every step of the way. Today is an incredible opportunity to give back and inspire the next generation of Lehman College leaders. My favorite way of giving back is actually sharing my experiences along the way. I had more than a decade of experience before assuming the role as Chief Executive Officer at the Hunts Point Produce Market. I started out in the private sector doing traditional engineering work. I made my way into construction management around infrastructure for schools. And at some point, I made my way to the MTA bus company doing infrastructure work around bus depots, one of the bus depots right there in the Bronx, the Eastchester Bus Depot. And then from there, I went on to the New York City Economic Development Corporation, and I had a portfolio of projects, over 110 projects. Alex had a good chunk of that as well, running, over $500 million worth of work in that portfolio around waterfronts. And one of those waterfront projects that we ran was New York City ferries, and we'll talk a little bit about it, bringing the first ferry landing to the Bronx, the Soundview landing. Landon. So those are some of my experience. So prior to getting to the market, I had over a decade of work within construction and engineering. And I'm proud to be leading the Hunts Farm Produce Market, a critical part of New York and the nation's food infrastructure. My journey hasn't been easy, but with hard work and commitment combined with my educational experience and a great team behind me, I've been able to thrive and reach back to help others. As an engineer, I've always worked in infrastructure. Infrastructure is about physical systems, production, and process. My engineering background helped me understand systems, and my MBA training gave me a better understanding of business and really gave me the skills to manage and deal with people. Let me tell you a little bit about my journey. So I'm a professional engineer by trade. I'm licensed in the state of New York, and I've spent the last decade building out the city's infrastructure. My team and I, as I said earlier, brought the Soundview ferry to the Bronx, and we actually, when we were building that land, and we thought it was going to be, not as popular, and actually ended up being one of our most popular landing right there in the Bronx. So it shows y'all the power of the Bronx. And we also installed another 12 landings across the city, and that was the first phase of the ferry system. Now I spend my days building out our food infrastructure. That's what Alex and I do on a daily basis, is just think about how we could, number one, keep our facility going as it is. It's a facility was built and opened in 1967. It's about 55 years old. The infrastructure definitely needs a revitalization. However, our 30 merchants have been able to feed over 22 million people every year through that market. So we're very fortunate about the work that we do. So if anything, we're very creative. I migrated to the United States in the early 90s and landed in Yonkers, New York, right next to the Bronx. So I spent 3.5 years observing my environment in high school. And actually for a good chunk of high school, folks would think I was, the quietest kid, but I was just trying to just get the lay of the land. And, like most engineers, I'm analytical and reserved. At school, I spent time building alliances and making friends. I learned how to break out of my shell and how to listen and become a beacon of clarity. After high school, I attended Fairleigh Dickinson University in New Jersey, and I picked something practical and broad. I actually studied mechanical engineering technology, but my first dream since I was 8 was to be a pilot. So many times I thought I was going to be flying, Oprah around or some celebrity, but I'll tell you a story as I progress on in this. But the key thing I wanted to bring around is I want to tell you a little story, or a big story really, around what we call the People's Market. It's the Hunts Point Produce Market. We employ over 2,000 workers, men and women who work hard during long shifts, and are always cold, regardless of the weather. So we have a story at the market. In the wintertime, sometimes it's even warmer inside the refrigerator box than outside. That's the type of work the men and women do down there every day, and we're very proud of it. 7 days a week, they keep the flow of fresh and nutritious vegetables steady, even in the midst of local and global crises. The people who power our market get produce on the plates of over 22 million folks in the New York region. These warehouse workers, truck drivers, distribution specialists, and merchants are the backbone of our operation. We have a deep and rich history that goes back over 200 years. They're family-owned businesses, and one of the things that we're proud of is that the workers, and not only the businesses, they're all generational. So there are workers that work there and so on that are generational. We are a hub for the freshest produce, and it's right here in the Bronx. That's the beautiful thing. Let me tell you a few other stats that we have. We are on 113 acres down here in the Bronx. We are the largest produce market in the world, produce only. We believe that a nourished community is a strong one, and our vast reach is essential to local and our national food infrastructure, and it has been for generations. Hunts Point Produce Market is a true community staple. Let me give you some facts that speak for themselves. 2.5 billion pounds of produce pass through the market annually. We supply 60% of the produce that goes into New York City comes right out of the market. We employ over 10,000 people directly and indirectly. We source produce from 49 states in 55 countries. We supply 2,500 greengrocers and 23,000 restaurants. And as we said earlier, we feed 22 million people every year, especially around Thanksgiving. And one of our favorite things to do around Thanksgiving is actually we do our week of giving, and we go across the boroughs donating food to folks in need. You know, another important stats that we are proud of is that 65% of our workers live right here in the Bronx. Our market is gearing up for the next 50 years by overall in the market to make it greener, more sustainable, and eco-friendly. We're adding electric charging stations, solar panels, green roofing, and more refrigerated warehouse space. These innovations will help increase food security, meet growing demands, generate more than 1,000 new good-paying jobs, and reduce the market usage of fossil fuels. Revitalizing the market will cost about $750 million. It's a tall order, but we've already raised nearly a third of the required funds, and we're very optimistic that through public-private partnerships, we'll reach our ambitious goal soon. We're leaning into the future at Hunts Point Produce Market so that we can be prepared for emergencies and interruptions, whether they're global or local. We're evolving so that we can continue to keep New York's food system and infrastructure strong enough to sustain the region now and nourish the generation for the future. Revitalizing the market is the key to the future of our food systems. Yeah, we have gotten some great support around the market from our mayor, from our local electeds. We have Mayor Adams, who have committed well north of $140 million to the market. We also have Senator Schumer and Richie Torres and Amanda Septimo, all the electeds that are really supporting, Councilmember Salamanca, that's really pushing for us to have some more commitments here, and we're very optimistic about what the future brings. Here's what some of our stakeholders are saying about the market.
This is one of the most important economic engines, not just in the South Bronx, not just in the Bronx, but in all of New York. If this market is not revitalized, New York will suffer a severe economic blow.
There's no place like this on earth. We have employers and employees who have families that have been here for generations. Like, devotion to the market is encoded in your DNA.
The redevelopment needed at the produce market would benefit every resident in the Bronx and this city by creating climate resilient infrastructure, more union jobs, and have a greater capacity to serve the 22 million plus people who rely on the market for fresh food.
The Hunts Point market for so many years, since 1967, has truly been an economic engine for the city of New York, but it's really been an incubator and a beacon of hope and opportunity for thousands and thousands of families that work here every single day.
We have a real gem in our backyard with the Hunts Point Produce Market. It's the largest produce market in the world, and it feeds both New York City and the country.
I grew up not far from the market, just a few blocks away, and this market represents so much, not only for New York from an economic perspective, but so much for community.
Those are some beautiful things that our supporters and our local electeds are saying about, local and national electeds are saying about the market. We're increasing New York State's current distribution capacity and growth capabilities to meet the change in population and demographic trends. We are really putting a lot of work around just our ability to feed the region in the future. These innovations will help increase food security by meeting growing demands and generating, as I said before, 1,000 new good-paying jobs, which will support another 10,000 jobs directly and indirectly, new jobs in the Bronx. The market's commitment to providing New Yorkers with healthy and fresh food extends to the city's most vulnerable, which is why we donate over 15 million pounds of food annually to support underserved communities. Now, a little bit about the lessons I've learned on my journey, and it's some of my favorite things to do. You know, everyone has their own journey, and here are my tips and strategies for your success. If you're traveling the executive route or working to climb the corporate ladder, here are some tools. Hard work, empathy, and first impressions, and a little bit about hard work. Some days it's 19, 20-hour plus days in terms of hours of work, and some days it's a regular work day. So we do what we have to do to get the job done and keep New York fed. It's the same thing that our men and women do every day at the market, keeping the city and the region fed. And then empathy. We know that every decision that we make affects not only us, but also our employees' families. So we try to do our best to make the best decision around what we have by empathizing what's going on the other side. And then first impressions, we always try to do our best. We roll up our sleeves, and as you know, if this is what we have, it's always our best effort, our best foot forward. Now, I said a little bit about that. I had a dream about flying. So if you prefer flying your own airplane, here are the top 3 qualities to run a business. A little bit of it is passion, mixed with some persistence, and then some hard work. Passion is one thing that you can't coach. You have to have it. You have to love or have a strong like for what you're doing, and that's what keeps us up and gets us going. For us, it's feeding New York and feeding the region, and really for me and my team, it's really impacting the families that deal with the market. One of my thoughts is that if you could give someone an opportunity, that's a solid path to tackling food insecurity. If you could feed your family by working, that's another way of doing it. And then persistence. You never know what being persistent and pushing through and tackling every challenge that comes your way will get you. You just have to keep at it. And hard work. Nothing beats hard work. Here are some other lessons. Here are my key lessons, which you can use at any point of your professional journey. Make your work speak for itself. In all the roles that I've had, I made it a point to put my best work forward. And this is what I do every day, working alongside our merchants to keep New York City fed and the region. Working to find creative business challenges. Some days, it's Alex and I, or Kevin, or Ralph, Charles, Patty, Ken. And I'm not trying to miss any team members. I shouldn't have started with the names, but the entire team of the Hunts Point Produce Market, including the merchants. But we wear many different hats. Some days I'm wearing my engineering hat, or my construction hat, or my business hat. There's some days when Alex is drilling down on numbers or running economic numbers. And actually, those numbers that are driving our economic models, Alex has been instrumental in developing those. And, we say 1,000 new jobs. We think it's a lot higher than that, but we know we could attain those new jobs. And that's what we're going to stick with. And, we're aiming to meet and exceed. I have a motto, we take the work seriously and not myself or ourselves. Leave your ego at the door, you hang it up. It's important for us to really have the best ideas within the room, no matter who you are. I give you a little joke. Alex and I was at the city, and as I said, we hang up our titles and our egos at the door. And I remember we're having a tough challenge with one of our city agencies, and one of the team members ran in and said, "Hey, Phillip, you got to put on your title now." So I suited up my senior vice president, director of construction, and called the agencies, because sometimes that's all the folks will respond to. But in general, we try to leave those titles and those egos at the door and really tackle the challenge internally, and then we try to figure out how we message that externally. So those are some of the things that we do on a day in, day out basis. The other thing is, I've always looked at ways to expand and provide services within and outside of the role. I remember working as an engineer and an excellent estimator with engineering abilities, and really working to cross-train between my estimating department, my engineering department, just to really drive efficiencies and reduce costs. So those are some of the things you do. So, you try to add value in whatever role that you're in, and always put your best foot forward. And then the other thing is working past the no's. Don't let a no or negativity stop you from accomplishing your goals. I remember earlier on in my career, I had a role that was coming to an end, a role that could have been extended. And basically management said, don't get too comfortable. It's not your role. I was pretty disappointed. I said, listen, I've worked pretty hard to be here, but it wasn't my path at the time. And just reflecting, I was reflecting with Alex on the way here before this. Is like if I would have taken that role or would have gotten that role, I wouldn't be here today. I probably would have taken a different path that would have led me somewhere else. So you never know what the universe has in store for you. So don't force things, but push forward. And if it's not for you at that moment, it could just be not for you at that moment, and you don't let it stop you. You push past those no's. Pushing past that no allowed me to lead over $1 billion of construction for New York City, which ultimately, as I said before, led me to the produce market. And now I'm here talking with you tonight. So those are some of the things that we do. The key takeaway is that build on the no's or obstacles and use it to move forward with your goals. The other thing is be adaptable and flexible. I had a general outline of where I wanted to go with my career, which ultimately led me to pursue engineering, an MBA, and a professional engineering license. I knew at some point I wanted to lead organizations and people, and I wanted to officially build on that. But prior to that, as I said, before I knew what my strengths were, I thought I was going to be a pilot, and I actually pushed forward and graduated college and started taking lessons. I actually never got my license, but if I had to, I could take off and land an airplane, a small one. So if I had to, I have about 140 something hours worth of flying. So, but it wasn't for me at that point. And at some point it may be for me, but for now, building around the city's infrastructure is what is for me at this time. And it's one of my passions, The other thing, the other lesson is really paying it forward. I have a rule: if someone is genuinely looking for help, we work to find them that help. And actually, the way we got to pound for pound, got this running so much work at the city, Alex and I, over $1 billion, is that we never turned work away. We never, as long as we weren't endangering the team or endangering ourselves from not making a deadline, we took on that work. And if we couldn't find if we couldn't do the work, we would point that folks in the right direction. So that's ingrained in us in terms of really helping and putting our best foot forward. And it's the same thing we do here every day. If someone comes to us generally looking for help, we try to find some sort of a solution, or if we can't do it ourselves. Information and education is a tool to be shared. Also, another key principle is valuing team members' ideas as we work towards shared goals. I want the best idea in the room so we can make the best possible decision at that moment, and that's what we do on a day in, day out basis. It's important that we all continue to pave the way, and that will allow for others to benefit from our shared experience. We must all pay it forward, And in conclusion, on my lessons learned, I wouldn't trade my professional journey for anything. I'm grateful for my accomplishments thus far and confident that the best is yet to come, through all of our shared experiences. And that's really us in a nutshell here at the market. And thank you again. Thank you, Team Lehman. Thank you, Team Hunts Point, for having me. And I'm looking forward to the next portion of this.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I was taking notes, and I don't think I'm glad we recorded this, because I want to listen back to some of the things, because you really dropped some good gems there. And thank you so much for that. Folks, we are going to open up this time for Q&A, and you can type your question in the chat and we will read the question for you. Emily, I'm just gonna, I know I'm not putting you on the spot just because I know Emily for years and I know the way her mind works, and I'm pretty sure you have at least 5 questions bubbling in your head that you wanted to ask. So if you want to start us off, that would give folks some time to type their questions in the chat.
I'd love to. Like, I was taking notes too. But yeah, so I also want to thank you on your lessons learned, just because they are like so inspirational, and like it was really hitting me personally. Like, I've actually had a really bad week this week, and it's actually one of the first things that actually gave me hope and for the future. So thank you on a personal level for your words of wisdom. So a lot of my questions are actually more focused, less on leadership, but more on the food aspect, because that is one of my passions, as I mentioned it earlier. And as we were talking in the waiting room initially, you mentioned like sea vegetables. And so I was curious about that, if you can like shed some light a little bit on harvesting vegetables, because a lot of indigenous nations, when they're on close to coastal regions, they use a lot of like seaweed and things like that. And we do have a food insecurity issue in the Bronx. So are there, and I'm actually a part of, going on tangents, I'm sorry, but I'm a part of farm school right now, NYC. And we were recently discussing how it's illegal in New York City to actually harvest from the water in the area. So if you could shed some light a little bit on that, I would be so grateful.
And we're gonna try, because I remember, Alex and I were chatting that we had some 5 and 6 year olds at the market. We hosted them a couple of weeks back, and they asked some pretty tough questions around underwater, not harvesting, but what grows underwater. And I think we came up with a seaweed, and hopefully we're doing our merchants justice. But we are on our end looking at some pretty innovative things ourselves. We just had a conversation with a vertical farmer, and I know this doesn't answer the question around harvesting from water, but we're really looking at some unique technology that could help us just be more sustainable locally. On the water end, I could just tell you, from not necessarily from a produce end, but more of we've done work. I actually had a commercial fishing license through the New York City Economic Development Corporation, because we had to put oysters in the water, which cleaned the water to make it more clean, so that we could actually use it better. So that's something. That's the only piece that I know regarding harvesting around the water. But I know we are looking at some unique ideas, from rooftop gardens to really vertical farming, by really just working to be sustainable. We also working to open up the pipeline of produce within New York. As we understand it, through our research, Alex and I, and the market, we're realizing that New York is poised. It's the only, as we understand it, the only state that could actually feed itself in a national emergency. For instance, if all avenues were cut off, we could actually grow and sustain ourselves. We have the right set of tools here, and those are some of the things that we're working alongside the New York Farm Bureau, just to really bring some more excitement around locally grown, and also some opportunities for by increasing capacity of the market for locally grown produce. Not exactly towards water harvesting, but those are some technologies that we're in the future. Emily, hopefully I'll have more info on that. But in regards to local grown and things that we've done in the water to make it cleaner and usable, hopefully I've come close to your question there.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I see we're getting some questions in the chat. Thank you, Emily, for your question. This is from Richard, and he says, do you have a corporate social responsibility component to the market? You shared having provided a million pounds of produce as donations. Amazing. What else?
Mhm. So that's a beautiful question, Richard, and an excellent question. It's a question that internally, myself and the team and our board and our various internal committees that we think about every day. Number one, we've been a part of the Bronx for over 55 years, so it's really connecting and ensuring that those families that come to the market and work at the market, have a good impression, and we want it to be a place for folks to come to. So that's been one of our key focus. I think our business is feeding New York, and the folks come. Half the time you don't see our merchants because the market opens up at 9 p.m. on a Sunday, 10 p.m. during the week, and they go all the way until the next day, and then they start right back again. So for us, it's just to really working on a corporate end to really connect with the community. To let folks know what we're doing, not just because we're working to be good, good corporate citizens. And then the other piece we've been doing is really working with some of our local organizations. Our neighbor, Rocking the Boat, they teach kids how to build boats, and they're right next to us actually, on Edgewater Road. And I'm a part of that board. The Sylvia Center teaches kids how to cook and eat healthy, and we are part of that. Myself is a part of that board too, and so we're really looking at ways how we could really impact the youth, because that's our future, and just show folks the various jobs within the market. Like we've brought kids up from the Global School of Commerce down in Harlem, and they're amazed to see that we have train cars that actually coming from North Dakota. We actually take flour. We have a contract with our rail operator, and we actually bring flour in the market through our rail operator. So we have a joke at the market that we also supply New York City's bagel infrastructure, because we bring all of that flour in. But folks that come to the market are amazed at the various different jobs in the market, and those are some of the things that we want to introduce the community to and the youth to. You could go all the way up, from the train coming in from North Dakota all the way up to leadership, executive leadership. So that's many jobs right here in the Bronx, and it's a true economic engine. So that's a part of our old corporate responsibility and structure. I think it's just always been a part of us. We're just making an effort now to really connect more with the community.
Thank you. Jason has a great question. Passion is what you hope to see in staff and what some of us look for in new hires, but it's not always there. Some people just have exceptional skills. Please speak a little bit about staff motivation and how important that is for businesses with a human course like yours.
Oh, that's some of for me, my leadership style is that I know when folks are working. I think for us as leaders, we and you said it right. Passion is one thing, and exceptional skill sets is another. And I think sometimes it's not, you don't have to be necessarily passionate about food or food infrastructure, but you may be able to be passionate about that thing within that system, whether it's IT or, whether it's, people or training. So some of the things that we do on our end is recognizing those skill sets and really putting folks in that position to really utilize their skills, and then within that you could fuel passion within an industry, outside of yourself. So the skills are definitely a plus, and I think it takes leaders like myself and other leaders to really recognize that and give folks an opportunity to thrive. My thing is like holding people accountable, but without being overbearing. I think folks that are passionate, that really want to affect change, are going to do it no matter what. And I think we have to be honest as leaders to say, listen, if you're not doing a good job, we evaluate you accordingly, but maybe putting you in a spot where you can be doing your best. And if you can't do your best, then some folks, it's not some folks may or may not, and it may not be the place for them. But the number one thing is recognizing the skill set, putting personnel in the spot that really highlights that skill set, that may reignite or fuel that passion, and recognizing and really evaluating and being honest with the skill sets that we're looking for. And hopefully I hit those key points for you.
Yeah, that's true. Mikhail has a question. Thank you for sharing your story. You are an inspiration. Can you share a bit more about your leadership style? So a continuation of what you were saying.
Mm-hmm.
Share a little bit about your leadership style. How do you empower your staff to bring out their voices, and how do you set up staff of color for success?
Those are really, really good questions. And one of the key things, bit of my leadership style is, I said it earlier, just hanging up your ego at the door. I think, very early on, and we've all been there, picture yourself at a conference room table and, say you're new at the job and you're sitting there and you say, man, I have to have an answer for something, and you're waiting your turn, trying to figure it, how you're going to jump into this conversation. I think one of the key things as you go up in your career is that you don't have to have an answer at that moment. Sometimes it's just for you to, sit, be in the moment, be thoughtful, write down questions, and then figure out where your groove is, And I think it's sometimes it's very difficult to do that. And I remember that in my career as well, is that you want to highlight that you're knowledgeable, but, maybe your knowledge, maybe your answers aren't relevant at the time. So sometimes it's important just to, listen. So that's one of the reasons why I try to, within our walls, I know externally when we go out, we have to, suit up and we have to, get out there. But it's important for me, for my team members to have that. It's not a pressure cooker. That's what I always say to folks. You take that off. You come in, you put your ideas. We are critical of each other, in a professional way. We have a good laugh. It's an open environment, but, what we don't want is for so many ideas to, to cloud a decision point, meaning that you can't have every decision point, so you get as much information as you can. And then at some point there's a go moment, and then you have to, make that cut. For me, I use like an internal meter. Like I said, do I have at least over 80% of the information that I need? Sometimes we're in a higher confidence level. Maybe it's 90, 95, and, maybe Alex is saying, yeah, I'm seeing this, and, maybe Kevin or someone else will say, I'm seeing this. And it's like, you know what? We're going to go. And then, if I don't feel comfortable or don't feel like I have enough information, I won't make that decision at the moment. It also depends on how critical that information is. Sometimes you just have to rely on experience. For instance, if it's an emergency per se, those, the decisions speed up, and you really just let your team get at it, and you just make the best decisions you can with the information you have. So my leadership style is that I welcome everybody's information. I give you a clear story. Like I remember, building infrastructure around schools, and I would talk to, a project manager, and I said, listen, when is the, when are you going to get, block or CMU or brickwork for the building? It's like, yeah, that's going to be this week. And I would go down and talk to, the bricklayer to work, and it's like, something, there's something happened, that thing isn't coming until next week. So so that's one of the reasons why I value everybody's information, because sometimes when you get down to it, you get the real information from the folks in the field. So you're not above anybody's decision point. Everybody has value to the team. So to answer your direct question, a bit of my leadership style, if I have the opportunity to get as much input as possible, I will get it from everybody. Everybody has adds value, but it also depends on my timeline of me making decisions. So sometimes I may speed that up by just relying on some experience or other people's input when I have it.
Yeah.
And hopefully I hit the nail on the head there for your questions.
You did. You're answering a lot. And I think after I ask these, I see there are 3 questions in the chat. After I ask, I think this might bring us to our close time before the intermission. So Gail asks, as you say, Hunts Point Market is indeed the largest market in the world for fresh produce, $3 billion. And yet Bronxites on the whole do not have access to this healthy, delicious food and are the most food insecure in the nation. How can this produce be shared? Wait, Joe. How can this produce be shared more widely with the Bronx community? And how do you plan to increase access to fresh produce to local Bronx communities? This is a great question based on what we were just talking about.
Oh, you hit it, and it's a challenge that we have, and I think it's a challenge that we're actually working to tackle. We're in the wholesale produce, so when you come in and you buy, it's 50 apples, 70 apples, whatever's in that box, so some of the conversations that we're having, Alex and I, with other stakeholders, is like, how can we figure out ways to actually get access to whether it's breaking it down for the bodegas so they can sell it and have access, and those are some of the ideas and thoughts that we're having. Having some sort of a retail function close by the market. We have almost 2,000 workers coming in daily, and yes, we can go right down to a merchant. We could get a box of apples, and we could share it in the office. But how can we make it more readily available? I give a story all the time. I remember, I try to, my wife and I try to give the kids fresh veggies, and I remember packing my bag and leaving the bag at the door. I had to meet my kid, my 7-year-old, and my wife said, make sure you bring him, some, fresh stuff. So I put a banana, all that good stuff in the bag, left it at the door. I left the market and realized that, oh my boy, I don't have fresh produce. So long story short, I went into a gas station, and an orange was for $1.50. Now I'm leaving a market with all this produce to not have access to getting fresh fruits and veggies. So I actually found somewhere a few miles away from the peninsula. But I think some of those challenges are broader, and we're actually working to tackle those. Coming from the wholesale side, how could we have more retail access to healthy foods? And the more retail access, because one of the things that folks don't realize that the market does, it actually controls the price of produce within the city. If the folks on the side that actually sells, like the $2-4 bananas, most of that shopping is done out of the market. So we are a market of that always finds an avenue for, say, for instance, someone in California grew too much strawberries or whatever. They send it to New York, and with all the bandwidth that we have here, we'll always find a market. So sometimes our merchants would tell us, the folks on the side of the road selling have fresh produce because they shop daily, so and the market keeps those prices down. So those are some of the challenges that we're working on, is really trying to have more access to retail around the market, coming from the wholesale side, and that's something that we're working closely with our stakeholders and to figure out how to repackage those so that we could have more access there.
Yeah. Yeah. As you reflect on your life trajectory, what is one thing that you wished you would have known earlier? And this question on you wish you would have known earlier when it comes to leading teams. And this question comes from Mercedes.
One of the things, it boils down to, I remember having, sometimes in our business, it's we do a lot of planning. And then sometimes, if work isn't going on, we're actually planning for the future. And I remember being at it was the MTA, and I remember the project starting up all at the same time. So you go from a period of not having projects starting and everything starting all at once. And this goes back to what I was saying before, like everybody wants an answer right now, or you may feel pressure to have an answer right now. And I remember, having, a few things going and sometimes you have to figure out a way how to slow it down. You could say, listen, give me a few minutes or give me an hour. Let me go check. Or I don't have that answer right now. Let me check. Don't be afraid to, say you don't know, and let me find out. I'm working towards it, And I think sometimes, folks always want to have that answer. Look, but it's important once you figure it out to at least have a couple of things in your toolkit that you could go ahead. So I think for me, it's to answer your question, some of the things that I wish I knew. It's like you don't have to have all the answers all at once. Definitely another big thing that I'm learning now, and we're learning, is really trying to leverage your team members, leveraging your network. You're only as good as the folks around you. I'm grateful that I have some great team members that help us push things forward. We're a pretty lean and efficient team. We mentioned some names before. I won't miss any names, but I know Alex is there. I know Kevin, Charles, everybody back home is there. But we really work to leverage our team. So those are some of the things. A strong network is great, and don't feel pressured like I must find that network right now. Make it be organic. Like we are in our network. Like this is our network now. We all are part of it now. Suzette, Emily, Patricia, Janet, David. This is a piece. We may come up on my end with something that deals with education. I need to reach out to Suzette, or something with the market. I've reached out to Patricia, in terms of that. So make it be organic. Do not force it, and if you don't know, it'll naturally come, so focus on the network, and then, really focus on the folks around you. And then you don't have to know everything at once. Take notes, listen. And, I think people appreciate, cold honesty if you don't, And those are some of the things that I've learned on my way up.
I want to check in with you, Phillip. Are you doing okay to answer 2 more questions?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay. Marlene says, you said to be adaptable and be flexible. How do you keep up good work in an environment where there is little support to grow professionally, and how do you stay positive?
That is a very, 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 very good question. And I think we've all been there, right? And I think it's important that, when you get discouraged, you lean into yourself and you work to develop yourself, right? Don't let, I've been in environments where, it's not the most supportive, but you try to find support within it. Sometimes it's, a spouse or partner at home that could hear certain things. Sometimes it's a colleague at work. I know you have to keep those lines, but you could, through shared experiences, you could bounce things off of each other, right? Whether it's tackling a challenge. And I find out on my end, if you're really focused on the core work, the challenges will always be there, and it's going to rock you, right? And it's and sometimes it's there to either get you off guard, but whenever you feel yourself, and we all get it, I get it. You feel yourself going off path, you try to say, okay, what am I here for? What am I here doing? A prime example, we've been in, Alex and I have been in spots where we're going to, whether it's a big presentation or we're going to talk to stakeholders, and then out of the blue, something, comes up that's a surprise, right? And I said, listen, we know what it is now, and the focus at hand is to get this task out the way. Let's lean into our strengths. Let's get this thing done, and then we come back and refocus. So, if you are in a spot where you have very little support, don't be discouraged. Definitely continue to work on your core skill sets. I would say, definitely look to see if there's other places where you may fit into a groove. If it's toxic, get out of it. I would say I wouldn't. That's a detriment to yourself. But through that portion, as you work through it, also lean into your internal strengths and continue to work on building your skill sets.
I agree. Angel Tobar, and Angel, I know Angel so well. He is a part of the food justice program and loves gardening. So this is such a typical Angel question. He says, what programs, contracts, or agreements do you have with all the local gardens and farms in the Bronx? And if you do not, what department, positions do you currently have to make those connections? How can we integrate our community to help build social capital and communal wealth? That's a whole dissertation, Angel.
That is a very, very, see the berries. That's a really good one. I think that's something we don't have any partnerships now, with gardening, but it's definitely something that's come up along our journey. We've heard, a community garden, somewhere in the market, or maybe even some of the ideas we've pitched around is making in a new facility, having some sort of community garden around the roof and so forth. So to answer your direct question, we don't have those connections at the moment. There's some things that we've thought about, whether it's with the botanical gardens, but it's very preliminary, very, very preliminary. I haven't brought them up in a while, but that's something that we will look towards, especially with the recent food study, the mayor's food study. So I know those are some things that are in there that we're actively monitoring, but currently we don't have any direct agreements now.
This has been a tremendous conversation. We are at the close of session one. What we are going to do, thank you, first of all, thank you for these fantastic questions. I know you need a little coffee or something, but Phillip, you need like a little break. So we're going to give you a 15-minute break. And folks, the other session is not structured. It's going to be networking, and it's going to be a dialogue. And we will open back with the same Zoom link you use for this. We'll reopen it in 15 minutes. So 7:15 is the scheduled time for the second session. But thank you. For folks who are not going to join us, thank you so much for joining us. I want to thank Mr. Phillip Grant and Alex for this powerful presentation and just the work you are doing in the Bronx. So let's get a little break, folks. Thank you very much.